Welcome, everyone. We have a special guest today, my print partner and my go-to for all things printing, Jenna Beth Ortiz. She has her own company called Edge Printing Solutions. She also works with and for Jostens. I have had her as a consultant whenever I have questions about printing. And she is one of the most consultative people who has taught me so much about printing that I've asked her to come in and answer some of your questions today. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jenebeth forward.
Thank you so much, April. I always enjoyed being invited here. In a nutshell, I work with the print consultant management. What do? I make sure that I understand your vision, your project. I also make sure that we manage your costs very well. I do have some clients that I really manage the whole process of their publishing and printing requirements. And of course, I will give you end-to-end support. So that's from A to Z. I do have my own company, but my company is a national rep of Jostens commercial printing and Print Links commercial printing. I also represent two printers in China and in India, and then smaller boutique family-owned printing companies. So you're actually dealing directly with a printer, but with all the knowledge of the publishing journey and how printing relates to that. So, number one is I really want to cover what are your printing solutions. There are two main ones, and this is where people confuse what is offset and what is digital. Offset is good if you're printing at least 1,000 books, or if your printing requirements require special applications. So for instance, if you want a book with embossing, foil stamping, spot UV, gilded edges, sprayed edges, and then, or if you want certain part of the book is one type of paper or stock and the other is different paper stock. Typically, that would go to an offset commercial printer because they have a lot of equipment to do all that. And that's what Jostens is the name is probably familiar to you because we're one of the largest manufacturer of yearbook. So all the equipment for doing all that bells and whistles are all under one roof and under, we don't outsource that. We do it all in one facility. With digital printing, the ink goes straight to the paper, typical like your LaserJet printer at home. But of course, this is very high end. Offset uses plates. We make plates for each color of the CMYK, and then that gets into a rubber blanket, then rolled into the paper. So the result is a very precise, consistent, vibrant color print quality. But the disadvantage is that it takes setup time. It's longer. So that's the reason why it's good and very cost effective for projects that require consistency and precision and bulk. And that's what we call bulk printing. Now, the digital printing is typically, it is shorter turnaround time. For us, during not on the busy season, we can produce books 7 to 14 days. During our busy season, you're looking at 15 days. So it is really a shorter turnaround time, while offset printing, you're looking at about 30 days. 25 to 30 days. So those are the main differences. However, when it comes to price, offset printing will really give you high value. An example would be if you're printing an Ingram Spark, right? 100 copies would probably be around $7.81. Our digital printing will probably give you about 8% lower than what Ingram will give you. And then for offset printing, for 1,000, you're looking at between $4.99 to mid $5. So that is 35% off than what you would do for digital printing. And then if you go higher with offset printing, the higher the quantity, the greater is your discount. So an example for 1,000 book of 32 pages, 8.5 by 8.5, 1,000 is about, I said, $4.99, and then 2,000 is about $3.59, thereabouts. While if you're printing in lower quantity, you're looking at $7.50 to a high $6. Printing solution that you choose depends on your vision and what goal is. And that's the reason why I like to talk to my prospective customers so that I can understand what they're trying to do, what their vision is. And then with you working also with April, both of us can determine what's the best path forward for you.
One of the things a lot of people tell me is that they're really frustrated with the print on demand quality and the print errors that they see coming out of that. If they're going with an offset printer for their own copies, they have the ability to create a much higher quality book, because what you mentioned with the number of you could come in at, that also is for thicker paper, coated paper. It's a much higher quality book as well.
Thank you, April. That's a perfect segue. One of the advantages, now I can't speak for all printers. I can only speak for the printers that I work with. I don't want this to be a sales pitch. I want it to be more of an education. The difference with our printing, both on the digital side and the offset side, is really the quality. The color quality is very important, especially in picture books. The difference also with Ingram is not only is our price lower, but Ingram gives you uncoated stock and it's only 70 pound. Well, you're going to get 100 pound and you have a choice of a gloss or a matte. And for picture book, customers are trying to save some money. I will only go down as low as 80 pound. Then also with Ingram, you're really getting basic color printing. So that's the reason why sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Both are digital press, and especially the offset, are really very high-end presses. And the difference is we do have a color master that went through a certification process that's an industry standard. So we are a G7 certified commercial printer. And then with Ingram, they're checking your files by machine. No human person is really looking at it. So if the size is right, if the facing bleeds are right, they'll say it's correct. And then you get your copy. Ingram only offers adhesive case binding, while we can offer you smite sewn binding if you go with the offset of 1,000 copies or more. Sewing is we sew the pages first in groups of signatures, like group of pages 16, 8, or 4, and then before we glue that to the spine. So that's the difference. Our digital printing plant offers only adhesive case bind. It's also a PUR glue that we use, meaning it's like applying double glue. It's a stronger glue, so your book is not going to fall apart, especially for like paperbacks. After a while, the pages are falling apart. That's the reason. The glue they're using is not a high quality glue.
Okay. So now, Jenebeth, I saw an email saying that you had a presentation that you wanted me to drive. So send me the presentation. I'm happy to pull it up. And while you look for that, I'll just put a little plug in. I was doing some things for some authors who were looking for pricing for their books. And, it's one of those things where, based on budget, having somebody like Jenebeth that's able to advise you, she was able to talk us through ways that we could drop the price of almost 500 just by not having end papers. Like, so she knows all the different ins and outs and ways of doing things, because I remember saying, I know my author wants end papers and that's really important to her. And she said, how important versus budget? And I was like, I don't know. Why do you ask? So when she told me it could lower the cost of the printing by that much, we went back to the author and she was like, no, for that, leave it off. I can deal with the white end pages. So there are just ways that this magician of a woman here is able to work with you, helping you to get the high quality, beautiful books you want, but let you know where you can cut corners or make some tweaks that will allow you to also lower the price of your books.
Having a printer that understands what your journey is or understand what your vision is. Some authors it's a passion project. They just want to say they've published a book. It's not something that they will market. Now, print on demand probably would be the best, and then maybe a handful of high quality books. Really understand what your goal is, and then I will match it to what's best. Or sometimes we will start with a low quantity and then print the high quality. An example is I know a lot of the authors here are children's book authors.
Yeah, that's right.
But I do have authors that are doing a lot of paperback, only black ink. If it's another printer, they're probably going to really try to get the printing from you, right? But for me, so I said, you know what? If you're only thinking of about 50 or 100, Amazon is the best because it's black and white and they have good quality on their cover. So again, it boils down really to your vision and your goal and matching it with the right solution.
I stopped at this slide here. Can you guys see what I'm sharing? We talked about digital printing versus offset printing. There are different things like plates versus the ink application. Somebody said, I just want the best quality. What is the pros and cons of going with digital versus offset and vice versa?
Offset printing would really give you the best quality.
Okay.
I work with a lot of authors that are into arts and photography, as well as graphic novels, especially for the photography and the art books. They are really managing their color profiles, which is the CMYK. So they are using different color combinations. That's something that could be limiting for digital printing, especially if the printer does not have that master certification to manage those color profiles. However, as both my digital printing and my offset printing, it produces high quality color and consistent color. In fact, some of my customers who have been printing offset but then needed hundreds of books right away, I would print it digitally. And then they say, well, I can't tell the difference. So it really boils down to the type of press that you have and how they manage the color.
Now, what about the fancy, like I love embossed or print or gold raised letters, things like that, all of the stuff that we can do that make the covers fancy. Can you do that with both digital and offset?
So in our case, I can't do that for smaller quantity. The plant that we have, our digital presses, do not have those other equipments that need to execute your special applications.
So if I want that special cover, then I need to go offset. Is that right?
Correct. So it has to be printed in our offset plant. We can go as low as 250. Keep in mind that your price per unit will increase because the big portion of the cost of offset is the setup, is we have to create the plates for each of the CMYK color. So this setup fee is being distributed to fewer copies.
Okay.
That's why your price per unit would be higher. But I do have customers that still do 250 because what they have are collectible books. We can use different materials. We can use leather, we can use cloth, we can use leather type materials. So that's one of the things that we can do. And one of the things that we can do in the offset side, I think Ingram offers it as a digital cloth lamination.
Yes.
We can offer that now in different kinds of texture. So say for instance, you have a book that you wanted to look like it's leather. We will use paper and then we will apply lamination that looks and feels like leather. An
Wow.
example is April, your Liberty Garden
Yeah.
project. The lamination we used with that because he was looking for this type of paper that is really very high end. So I suggested to him a grid lamination and it created the same effect.
Ah, so
Oh,
smart. And
a fraction of the cost, yes. Yeah.
nice. Okay. So let me move on here. Okay, so that's the pros and cons.
No, that's fine.
So the printing process, oh, this is a good slide to talk through because a lot of people are not sure how long should it take. When we go into printing in China, you need to give like 3 or 4 months worth, or if you're doing overseas printing. So how does it work with the US based printing that you have here as far as turnaround time?
Yes, you can see with different components in producing a book. Because I think if you know that, you'll realize why it takes time and why it's longer for an offset. In terms of production time, our hardcover books are 25 to 30 days after proof approval, and the soft covers are 10 to 15 business days after proof approval. That is, if you're doing offset. Digital, it is shorter. So for a hardcover and softcover books, you're looking at 7 to 14 days. And Leslie and Dottie can speak to the turnaround time.
That's why you suggested digital for people that came to us saying, I need something right now. And
Also, the quantity will drive a printing solution. If you're printing only 250 and it's something I can produce digitally, I'm not going to give you a quotation for offset because it's not commercially viable for you.
Right.
Example is I know you have a couple of authors that really wants 10 by 10, you know, and they want the end sheets. I can't produce 10 by 10 with Jostens, but I have a boutique family owned printing company that can do 10 by 10, that can do the end sheets, that can do dust jacket. However, the price is high. For a 10 by 10 book, if you're only ordering about 50, it will come up to around $14.50. How much can you sell it? Maybe the highest would be 25, maybe 30, depending on the subject matter of the book and if you're selling it in a high-end boutique. So those are the things that I tell my customers. This is the price, but is it commercially viable for you? Is it worth it for you? However, these two authors said, no, I want it that way. And even if I make only $5, that's how I want my book.
Yeah. And even the scenario you just walked through where a number of them for the 10 by 10 books are charging $25, and that's much more than they would make from print on demand. So there's that more beautiful look and feel. Now you were able to do a 10 by 10 for Sherilyn and her book and get that weight down. Tell me, how did you do that?
Well, number one was she was printing 10,000 books. Number two is there was a promotion going on during the time that she wanted to print and she can commit. So right off the bat, she got about 30% discount.
Wow.
And then one thing about me is if my customers are a nonprofit organization, I cut my own commission. So that's how we got to that. And her book is beautiful. It's got all the bells and whistles, the embossing, the foil stamping, the end sheets. So it turned out very, very nice.
That's amazing. This is the reason why I've made Jenebeth my go-to person when it comes to book publishing and book printing. She's been able to do some amazing things. I've been working as a publisher, printing books for going on 7 years now, and never found somebody who gave me kind of service or answers or consultation, like they want to really know what you need and want, and they come up with that perfect solution for you the way that Jenebeth does. This is always fascinating to me, the components of a book, and so many times we just don't understand how it all goes together. So I'll let you walk through this part of it.
The reason why I want to show you what components of a book is, we're assuming it's a hardcover book.
Yes.
Because different printers or different people name different parts of the book differently. So that's why if you're talking to another printer or designer, formatter, or an illustrator, you can talk to them with this visual. If they're using a different terminology, you can clarify what they mean, and then you're going to be on the same page. No pun intended. So if you look at that, where the blue one is, that's actually your board. One of misunderstanding is we're not printing on the board itself. We're printing on paper and covering a board with a printed paper. So a lot of times when I put on a quotation 65-pound cover stock, people right away will no, 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 that is too thin. I need a hardcover book. That's the reason why. And then if you look at this blue right here, that's also one of the reasons why we require certain margins and bleeds, because when it's printed and cut, trim, portion of your art will be wrapped around that board.
Right.
Sometimes there's art that do not extend to the edge and there's not enough art. A lot of times it cuts off. One of the things that we do is have a graphic artist on payroll, because I want a human person to look at it. And if it's something that we can tweak, we will tweak it so that it's per requirement, and that saves you correction fees. One of the things that I do for April, because I really appreciate her collaboration, is that I give up to 2 corrections every time you work with me. Once it's submitted, and then say you're missing a bleed, that is $50 to $65 right away. That's a cost that a lot of self-published authors may not be able to absorb. We try to do our very best to make sure that the file is print ready. And if there's anything that we can't catch with our naked eye or the software that we use, because it has to be dropped on another software at the plant, I'm absorbing the correction fees. One of the things that I do for all my customers is I will give you a hard copy proof. They're unbound and they're flat pages, but at least you're going to see the color consistency. A lot of time it's easier to proof when it's a hard copy, because you're going to see exactly the trim lines, the bleed lines, and if it's a spread, you're going to see it. So again, a lot of printers will charge you for that.
I paid, believe it or not, for my first book, I printed through Jostens, but I didn't know you at the time, and they charged me $100 for that. You don't charge for that. They're doing some stuff to help us. Oh,
So I will be very transparent. I work with a lot of authors and even corporations. I segment my customers, and I have told Jostens, I said, for these type of customers, especially self-published authors, I'm taking only X commission. I'll make my money on the corporations that are the marketing agencies that I work with, the high-end customers, because I know that they will pay for that, because that's within their budget. So
Nice. Well, we appreciate it very much.
So one of the things that I wanted to clarify, why I also want to show this, is the end sheets,
Hmm.
right? So these are end sheets. And then when you think about it, the front end sheets and the back end sheets have four sides to it. So side A is the one being glued to the board, and then this is B, this is C, and then that's D.
Yep.
And then on the other side, it's E, F, G, and G is the one being glued on the board. And then you have what you call the text block. So when you do page count, you do not count the end sheets. Your page count is only your text block. That makes sense. And this one is a liner. We offer two different kinds of liners. The most economical is just a paper liner. And then there's also the stiff board liner. One is more durable than the other. If you want very square spine, then you put a stiff board liner. A lot of times when someone is on a strict budget, I will remove that because $100 or $150, it makes a
Right.
difference, right? All adds up.
The printed end sheets are such a big deal to have, and costly to print in certain circumstances.
Yes, because again, we do it in offset. Printing the end sheets is a different setup. And then the end sheets, you do a 4/0. When you see 4/0, that means it's printed 4-color process on one side. So one side printed end sheets is the B and the C.
Okay.
And then if you want this ABC D also printed, then that would be a 4/4 because it's a 4-color process printed on both sides. The other thing with end sheets also is there are some customers that would like colored paper
Yes.
end sheets. Colored paper is very expensive. So one of the things, it's more expensive than you would print 4/4. So
Okay.
that's also a workaround that I do with my customers. Instead of using colored paper for the end sheet, we would print the white end sheet for color process. The only difference is the edge of the paper will still look white. There's a big difference in additional costs. They would go well with printed end sheets.
One of the things I wanted to ask about too, while we're looking at all the different components here, what are we seeing for increases in pricing because of tariffs? And are these boards and some of the paper being impacted by these tariffs?
There were a lot of miscommunication or understanding when the whole tariff announced. And so a lot of them are saying, oh my God, I'll be paying 150% now when I print in China. Educational books are still exempt from the additional tariff that were announced. So for China, it's still going to be 7.5% tariff. But, it's a fine line. I think children's book can come under educational books, but not all books are educational books. So, for
Right.
example, graphic novel and gamers that print their instructional, that really doesn't fall under educational books. The impact to US printers is at first we thought there were a lot of big publishers that came back and started conversations. They wanted to bring back their printing in the US. So it's good for us, right? However, the materials that use for book printing, like the boards, not a single manufacturer in the US make boards. Those are imported. Ink are imported, particularly for us because especially on our offset, we use UV ink, which is still your highest type of ink. Our suppliers have already increased their prices between 10 to 15%. April had one customer who is now ready to print, very price sensitive. And I just have to be upfront with him that there's a price increase. But what Jostens is doing is typically all that price increase gets passed on to the customer, right? But for us, is want to mitigate also the higher cost to the customer that we're really just increasing by 5%, depending on what's involved. So for April's customer, his price increased by 5%, but we actually had a 15% increase in our material cost. So I guess what I'm trying to communicate is we care.
Mhm.
Jostens care and I care. And so we will find different ways to save you money, and that makes financial sense for us as well.
Right. You've got to make money that makes sense, but I love the fact that you're trying to figure out some creative ways to help us as well. So here are some cost-effective trim sizes. That's one of the things that I always hear from my authors is, what size should I choose for a picture book? And I have a personal preference. I love the square books, but I never really thought about cost-effective sizes for printing, and you should consider how your choice may affect also your printing costs. That's a great thing to be able to get started early in conversations with authors.
Yes, that's correct. There's a cost-effective trim sizes, and it would be different for different printers. But I think for us, we're really cost effective because we buy our paper in rolls. Just imagine as a trunk of a sequoia tree. That's how the roll of paper is. So you can't even embrace it.
Oh, wow.
We buy it in rolls and then we cut it ourselves because we know the trend of what sizes we print, particularly yearbooks, right? Yearbooks 8.5 by 11 and 9 by 12. We cut the paper in such a way that we can put more pages to it. That's how this 8.5 by 11, 8 by 10, and 5.5 by 8.5 comes. Now, also in terms of the boards, we stock the boards for an 8.5 by 11 and 9 by 12 because we use that a lot for yearbooks. And then for page count for children's book, 32 pages is your optimal page. And I think not only for reading experience and comprehension and attention span of children, depending on the age group, but 32 pages is 2 signatures of 16 pages. So it's easy. Once you add a 4-page signature, that you make this 32 plus 4, 36, then that means that 4-page signature is manually bounded into the book. So it adds cost.
Most of my books end up being more than 32 pages because the book is 32, but then there's back matter. So
yes,
understanding that there's going to be an additional cost if it's more than that, that's really helpful.
It's really good to involve your printer from the very beginning, because while your illustrator is illustrating, while you're doing all your costing, then you can already determine what optimal or cost-effective page count. So you have the front matter and the back matter. So if you want to stay on 32 pages, then the text block should only be X amount, not really 32. From the beginning, people think, oh, it's a 32-page book, so I'm going to have my illustrator draw 32 pages. And that's how it adds up.
Expensive too with less illustrations.
Correct. And April can talk to this more than I can, but I really have to tailor it to the age group, right? And sometimes there are some children's book that doesn't have to be longer.
Right.
So general rule is the higher the page count, the higher the price because you're using more paper. Same thing, if you go outside of the standard size, depending on printers, so printers have different standard sizes. If you go outside of that and becomes a custom size, so yes, your price will be high.
If you guys have any questions, you can feel free to type it into the chat Or take yourself off mute and ask your question as we go. Dottie says, I was so concerned about the digital print, but those books came out beautifully. Couldn't be happier with my choice of digital. Leslie, too, I highly recommend Jenebeth. She's overseen the printing of my last 2 books. Service is excellent. The books are beautiful. I agree. I can definitely say the same because she did my Christmas book as well, and I absolutely love them.
Well, thank you so much for those kind words. That mean a lot to me. So the other is paper types and coding. This is where a big debate and misunderstanding happens. The paper, how the color vibrancy comes out printed will depend also on what paper is being used. Uncoated paper, meaning no sheen, nothing at all is applied to the paper. And that's what Ingram Spark uses. And that's what is being used a lot in paperback books that are kind of novels, text heavy. They're uncoated paper. Coated paper, it gives you more of a smooth texture and the ink holds out better. That's why you produce vibrant color. When coated paper absorbs the ink more, you have a choice of matte or gloss. When someone says matte, a lot of times people think that that's uncoated. A matte paper is still coated. It's just that it's lightly coated, not like a gloss that it has a very shiny feel to it. A glossy paper kind of reflects light, while a matte paper doesn't. If I'm doing a book that has images but at the same time are also text heavy, I would opt for a matte paper for readability. And then also, depending on your illustration style and the vibe, there are certain illustrations that would be better in a matte paper, or there are some illustrators. I've done a children's book that we use uncoated paper because it was watercolor, it was animals,
Beautiful.
wildlife. So you want the ambiance of the safari to come out in an uncoated paper.
Yes. Okay.
Binding options. Binding is how the book is put together. So you have saddle stitch. Saddle stitch is typically really it's using stapler. A lot of your brochures, if you'd see, right? And you open in the middle, there's staples. That's saddle stitch.
Okay.
And then perfect bound is your soft cover. When you're looking at quotation and you said soft cover, this is something that you would look at. Does it just say perfect bound or does it say PUR perfect bound? So when you see PUR perfect bound, that means that they're using the PUR glue, which is a stronger glue.
Ah, okay.
We're one of the few printers that do sewing for softcover books. It's similar to a case bound hardcover. We will group your pages and signatures before we glue it to the spine of the book.
So that might be more expensive than just regular perfect bound or PUR perfect bound, right?
Yes, and longer production time also.
Got it.
We could also do coil, which is the plastic one, do wire O bound. We do have customers that do journal planner books, things like that, or educational manual, they will use coil. It's the binding that really lays flat, right? But a wire O bound is very expensive. You're probably looking just for those rings, depending on how thick your book is.
What's the price of a coil bound? Or the coil?
Well, coil is also still kind of expensive because a lot of these has hand labor involved in it.
I see.
But then a coil bound doesn't look very, for me, really, it looks cheap. It's just handmade. And then for a hardcover, two things you can have, someone can tell you case bind, but they're not using PUR glue. And then Smite Sewn. For children's book, if you're printing with me offset 1,000 or up, I'm not going to even offer you adhesive case spine and PUR. I'm going to go straight to Smite Sewn. The reason why is our pricing for Smite Sewn, the price difference is really not that much, but a Smite Sewn book will add value to your book.
And durability too for like libraries and classrooms.
Durable, and then at the same time, it makes the book lay flatter. And then one of the things I do when I do a Smite is we could have the spine a loose back, and that makes it lay flatter. So I use that a lot on journals.
Okay.
And then I think I've talked to you about the paper liner and the stiff board liner. It's really more for aesthetic purposes. Now, I'm not going to go all on the illustration and file format because that's something April and her team can work with you. There's just a few items I want to highlight. And I think it's on the next slide.
Okay.
So bleeds, margins, and text color are the most important. And I think, of course, your illustrator and your book designer are working with that, but as an author, these are the three things that you should know and you should be asking, making sure that they're doing. So bleeds. For commercial printers, we need bleeds on all four sides. Ingram doesn't require you.
Right.
So that's one main difference. Margins, typically we will require higher margins in addition to the bleed just because of that safe zone. We want to make sure that nothing is trimmed off, especially if it's tech or an important image. And then that's even greater when it's a hardcover book because it has to wrap around the board. And then the next one is the text color. When you look at your proof on the screen, it's using an RGB color scheme, which is red, green, and black. What does that mean? That means that certain percentage of red, green, black are mixed to come up with a color that you want. And that's what happens on a screen. But then all printing uses CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and cap. Now, sometimes book designers build the text on CMYK or four color black instead of 100% black. What does that do? If the black text is built on a four color black, when it gets printed, there may be some registration issues. Remember how I said that we use plates for each color? So we run it and then we run the other plate. If there are any registration issues, your text will look hazy or there's some kind of a shadow around it. Those are the three key things that I think could be avoided right away from the get-go and can save you a lot of headache.
The other thing I would say is when you're starting to look for a graphic designer, you need to make sure that your graphic designer knows whether you're working with Jenebeth or any other printer, they all have specific requirements and may be able to give you some sort of a spec that your graphic designer will be able to use because it's going to be different than what KDP requires and what Ingram requires. And you don't want to surprise your designer at the end. It's much better if they have the ability to plan this out ahead of time because it may require some tweaks to the design when they're putting it together for you.
I will provide you and your designer templates as well as a comprehensive formatting guidelines.
Beautiful. That's very helpful. All right, so we got the cost considerations here. Highlight the areas I'd like to talk further about.
April is right. I think I've covered that a little bit earlier. The factors that affect your costs, quantity, the higher the cost. and then what printing method you're using. Is it digital or is it offset? And then the paper quality, and then the thickness of that paper. So in the US, we use pounds, but then overseas, particularly China, you will see GSM. So it's just a different way of measuring the paper. And then your binding option, your trim size, and of course, if you want all the bells and whistles, printed end sheets, dust jacket. I'm not a fan of dust jacket, particularly for children's book. I would rather put the money that you're going to use for the dust jacket on doing your foil stamping or your embossing, just because a dust jacket will add at least $2 to your cost. And a lot of times the dust jacket just gets ripped and thrown
I throw them away when I get them.
away.
The first time the kids read them, they're going to get ripped. It's going to look terrible. So I just rip it off and throw it away.
Yeah. I mean, dust jacket is good for other types of books. So say a book with leather cover and you're only doing foil stamping and embossing on it, then you put a dust jacket. And I think April will agree with me on this, unless you have a compelling content to put on the dust jacket, then use a dust jacket. When you're determining your print run size, your paper and binding choices, and also plan for hidden cost. So when you're talking to a printer, how much is a hard copy proof? How much are your correction fees? How much is your shipping? And also, this is one thing. If, say, you're printing in larger quantity, like 1,000, and you're shipping to a fulfillment center or a distribution center, an example would be Pathways, right? They have specific Ingram content. They have specific instructions on how to label the boxes. So a lot of times printers have costs, extra costs for doing all that. A lot of printers will charge you for, if you have multiple addresses, they'll charge you a drop ship fee for each address. In my digital printing side, I typically can work around the system and waive that for the offset. If it's just simple label and 2 addresses, I will also absorb that. But if it's really a complicated specific instructions like what Ingram content has and Pathway has, then there's an associated fee for that. So those are the things that you need to ask.
One other thing I've seen come up is that printing overseas, sometimes the shipping they'll include is just to the port. You're responsible to get it from port to door. By the time you're comparing pricing, when all they're doing is like when it gets off the boat, it gets to the port, that's all the shipping that they're charging you for. Of course, it's a big shipping cost because it's by boat, but then it doesn't even factor in the rest of it. And they don't usually take care of it. If you ask them to, they will coordinate it. So it can be hard to compare apples to apples for sure.
If you decide to go overseas, there's a place for that, right? As long as you're also ready to accept all the associated risk involved printing overseas, go for it. However, April made a perfect point. Is it only CIF, meaning shipping up to the port, or is it door to door? Meaning if you take care of everything, then it gets delivered to your door. But even on door to door, there are still other port fees that are responsible for and not your printer. So just be ready with that and then ask them those questions like the tariff, you're still responsible for that. The filing fee for documents, security filing fee for documents and all that, which is typically like $50 or so, you're still responsible for that. So there's still other costs that you're responsible for in addition to what they're giving you a price for, even if it's door to door.
Yeah, and it doesn't always get factored in. So sometimes we see these great quotes and we go, oh, this is awesome compared to this other person who really did disclose all of the different fees and things, and you make a choice and then later go, oh, I should have thought about all this other stuff because that other quote was a lot better. So it's just being well informed, and having somebody like Jenebeth can really help. If you find a better quote, she's going to tell you, hey, go with that. And I've heard her say that more than once when it came to like ADP and certain types of printing. She has right here in the instructions, request multiple quotes, get quotes from different printers, compare pricing, and ensuring you're getting the best deal. So yeah, and you can always ask. I don't have all the answers. Jenebeth is much better when it comes to printing, but if you have multiple quotes to compare, she can let you know if there's maybe some hidden fees or things that you need to get the full picture and make them more apples to apples quotes for sure.
And then also, I'm not one to go into a price war with other printers, but because, we're almost like a family, you're comfortable sharing with the quotations that you received, especially if it's like offset price. And I can always go back to leadership and see what we could do. And as April said, if we can't match it or better it, I'll be the first one to tell you that's really good price. You should go with them.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, counting everything is equal. They'll give you good
right.
customer service, they'll give you good quality.
Right. And so here are some of the examples you put together, and we talked through a little bit more of this. Anything you want to particularly highlight on this?
No, I think I talked about this, but if you could see, the only thing I want to highlight is with digital printing, you're not really going to see drastic price decreases when you increase your quantity. The price difference of Ingram and what we offer depends on the quantity they're getting.
It blows me away that you can come in lower than Ingram with much higher end paper, a person that they can actually speak to if they have problems. And I compare the difference. I had one person, I didn't catch her in time. She goes, oh, I just ordered 100 of each. I said, of what? She said, paperback and hardcovers on Ingram. And I was like, oh no, I could have picked somebody that could have helped you. Oh, anyway, we got her connected with Jenebeth so that when she orders her next order, she'll be able to get the better quality.
The reason why we can offer you a higher quality paper and then your price is low is because we stock 100-pound gloss at the digital printing plant, because we actually work with one company that do personalized books. This book is, and then they put the name of the person
Right.
in the book. And then also there's one online that you can order books in smaller quantity, but we're actually the one printing it there. So you're realizing the savings.
I think we went through all of these types of terminology, and I know we're getting close to the end of our session. So do you have anything to call out before I move on from this slide?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to call out is, and I think it's in the previews, but you will hear overruns and underruns. I do not give you overruns when it's digital printing. I've worked out something with a plant for you. But most printers on their quotation, they will tell you that you have an overruns. What an overrun is that they will print you more than what you ordered, or they can print less than what you ordered. Just look at that on their fine print.
Because it can't stop it at exactly the perfect number.
Yeah, they can't stop in the perfect number, but at the same time, they have to run more because during the binding process, during the folding process, something can be, or someone put the paper upside down. So it accounts for wastage and error.
Okay. So for overruns, you can purchase your overruns at this discounted price if you want them. Is that what you mean?
Yes, most printers actually will not give you a discounted price. It's the
Oh,
same price.
okay.
Yeah. And it will say there whether it's up to 10% or up to 50%. So if there's an overrun, just make sure that they're not charging you over that percentage of what they said in the contract.
Okay. And this is
An
an
example code, just familiarize yourself on the terminologies
Mhm.
and how it's written. And some printers will write it differently, but generally that's kind of the terminology or abbreviation that they use.
Is it okay if I share these slides with
Yeah.
that are interested in receiving them? I'll include that when I send out the replay.
I'll just probably put a for internal use only or something like that.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, for me, it's just tips for success. This is just to help you make your printing experience positive and hassle-free. So never skip proofing. Pay attention when you get your proofs. If you could get hard copy proofs without astronomical additional fees, do that. And as I said, you collaborate with the author, the designer, the printer. Connect everyone if that's something that you could do, because that just makes it, or if the printer will allow you to do that, because some printers will be very strict and say, no, our quotation says print ready files. That's what we need. I think April can help you with this, but I help my customers that I work with, I build a timeline for them.
That's
So like when I work backwards,
Mhm.
when they want their books, and then put milestones so that everyone are accountable for what they're responsible for.
Right.
And then the common mistakes to avoid, make sure that it says print ready, it's print ready. So the
Mhm.
bleeds, the low resolutions, images. And I think with you won't have a problem with this, because April's designers, they build the book separate, the text and the images. So there are some that will put the text on the image, so that creates a lot of problem and sometimes low resolutions. And always leave time for proofing. Do not rush the process because you have an event. Plan for it.
Give yourself more time than you think you're gonna need.
Yes. So yeah, that's about it.
Share here and see if anybody has any specific questions on your needs for printing. I'm happy to answer.
Dottie.
Go ahead, Dottie.
I'm just coming off a author high. I just had a 2-day book festival that I sold close to $1,000.
Wow.
And
Well, congratulations.
and people were kind of going around looking at all the books, and they said, we just want to see what they're like. And they came to my books, and I learned to open my books, not just have the covers there. And they were so impressed by the colors and the vibrancy. I mean, I don't even think they cared what the story was, but the pictures were so beautiful. I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yes.
Did you enjoy the event?
Oh my gosh, and they wanted to know about my author journey. Of course, I had to mention you, April.
Good, thank you.
I want you to send me some copy that I can have printed, so when I go to these places, I can hand a postcard, because everybody wants to know where I've been and how I've been, who I got this from. And I've got some things set up with the Houston Public Library to do writing workshops and read alouds, and Francis Domingo and I are on our way.
That's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so
much, April Cox. God bless you.
much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like everybody. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, I have a quick question for Jenebeth. Is digital printing versus offset printing, is there a big difference in the quality of the print
With my
for children's books? I mean,
with our print presses, not really. I mean, I think Leslie and Dottie spoke to it. They printed digital. However, that's something that you really need to investigate on. Make sure to ask samples if you're working with other printers. Not only samples, maybe ask them, hey, can you print a page of my book? Because samples, it can give you any samples. It may not be what they printed.
Well, I'm using you, so
Okay. Oh, you're using me. No,
eventually, I guess, yeah. So I'm using you, but
the only difference would be if you print digitally because it's a smaller quantity, binding will only be PUR, adhesive case bind. And then sizes that I said that are standard sizes, I'm limited to that sizes in my
Yeah.
print.
we're doing the 8.5. That was
Good.
one of the wires was there, but I
No.
think the quote you gave me was for offset.
I gave you a digital and offset.
Oh, you did? Okay. I need to pay attention to those different.
Yes. Yeah, I
Okay,
gave
so
you.
you gave me
I
both.
agonize, I know Kathleen, I agonized over that too for way too long because I had an offset before and I added and finally I got a show in a month, I gotta go do this. And Jenebeth came through and I had these stuff books shipped quickly and they are absolutely gorgeous. I like them better than the offset. They're
Oh,
so bright.
okay. So I'm going to go back and review that. I'm glad I asked that question because I didn't know there was a digital.
I think I gave you digital because
Mine was offset. I know I saw the offset because that's what I asked for, but I didn't know about the digital.
I think I gave you digital because we were printing less than 1,000.
That's correct.
Yes, so that was a digital quotation that I gave
Oh,
you.
okay. I'll go back and look at it when we're ready to iron out all the kinks.
Thank you so much, Jenebeth. Before I let you go, how should people contact you if they need your help?
You can email me, Jenebeth.ortiz@jostens.com. You can call me or text me, 310-623-7745, or message me on my Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is at Edge Books.
Thank you so much, and I'll make sure that the contact info appears where this video is posted as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
Bye.
day.